Stories. Stories are what define us. Our lives are influenced by stories, as well as influencing others by our own. For me, I've always been into film and video games. Even in 5th grade, when asked what I wanted to be when I grew up, it was always either a game designer or a film director. To this day, I still can't decide. I love video games and their way of storytelling, but I also love films in their own unique way of how they express a message. I focus more on filmmaking in terms of a career, because the technical process is easier for me to create through editing and more visualization. I've probably been more experienced by gaming in terms of skill and interest, but when I thought of pursuing game design, I knew programming wasn't my thing, and that I couldn't draw for shit. It was hard to choose what to focus on, despite this because I enjoy both equally. But then, as I started to grow older, things started to change. Now, compared to when I was younger when I started with this dream, games and film have begun to merge closer together into becoming one. Video games and film have both become cinematic and enjoyable experiences with high production values. Gone are the days of Pong and simple-sized thrillers with shallow depth in story and only rich in gameplay. People will say, games are not art. They're just games. The media represents it, and ironically films as well. As
video games are for little kids.
As kiddie shooting games, there's mindless fun, as if it was just you playing sports. But now, in this modern gaming age, I can confidently say they're more than just a time waster. My name is Travis, and with experience in both games and filmmaking, I have decided to tackle the similarities and differences in how games express and evoke emotion, to that of movies, TV shows, through a series of videos analyzing different games and genres. And for my first pilot episode, already merging the terminology, I will explore with the Citizen Kane of games. As a pilot of a TV show would start strong, so will I. Here, I present The Last of Us.
You make every shot count.
So, to begin, we have a setting and art direction, characters, a story with conflict, and music to set the tone. The fundamentals of what makes a story and a movie. In The Last of Us, you play as Joel, a survivor of a world-ending event that has left the world beyond repair. He once had a normal life that was destroyed right in front of him. Now a tragic past. His only daughter was killed by his own people. 20 years later, he has become a more cynical, jaded man. Through fate, he is tasked with smuggling a young girl who has been infected unknowingly to him and might be the cure to the virus, as she is the only person who has never turned after being infected. Reluctantly, he wants nothing to do with this task. He just happens to run into this situation while pursuing his normal, day-to-day life ways of survival. But little does he know, his life is about to change. In this journey of meaning, of why he still fights to live in this post-apocalyptic, savage world of no hope. So let's start out with the journey, as if it was told through a movie format and as a video game. A video game, in terms of length, is akin to that of a TV show season. Individual stories are told within an overarching main plot line, but not necessarily individual people. Video game storytelling focuses on the main overarching plot line in terms of importance with the execution of a TV show episode-to-episode format. A literal example of this would be the game Alan Wake. A movie is a passive experience that goes by in 2 hours or so. Everything is paced so well and fast that we are more immersed in what's happening in the story. And by the end, feel like we've been through hell and high water. It seems like a more effective way of storytelling, given it's done in one sitting rather than multiple days or weeks.
It's a week the first level down, 6 months the second level down, and the third level.
It's 10 years. Who would want to be stuck in a dream for 10 years?
Depends on the dream.
But is it? Let's say you're on a football field. You start walking. And by the time you reach the end, you're like, man, it would have been faster if I ran. Now, compare that to walking a quarter of the field. You wouldn't have that thought of, oh, this took so long, I should have ran. Because it didn't feel long, and literally wasn't. That's what a movie storytelling is like compared to video games. The thing is, one isn't better than the other because of this.
Nice try, Lao She! Goodbye, Dr. Jones.
Instead, it provides similar emotions you would get in the other media.
Hands in the air!
She's not breathing.
Hands in the fucking air!
Just look at the flowers.
For example, in The Last of Us, the game is 12 to 15 hours long. You are stuck as the one person, walking every step all the way to the end of the game. It's daunting when movies are told at a more passive, swift pace and better suited to people who have less time on their hands to play games. People speedrun games for fun, just to play it as a challenge, as a game. Growing up, I had friends who want to race me to the end to feel like it's more of a challenge to win than out of experiencing the story at the pace the developers were in. In games, you can explore the world, pick up objects and books, and learn about the world around you. The lore of the world is more of a sense of discovery than that of being told through visuals in a movie or exposition in a more well-paced process.
Why am I here?
Your life is the sum of a remainder of an unbalanced equation inherent to the programming of the Matrix. You are the eventuality of an anomaly which, despite my sincerest efforts, I have been unable to eliminate from what is otherwise a harmony of mathematical precision. While it remains a burden assiduously avoided, it is not unexpected and thus not beyond a measure of control, which has led you inexorably here.
The game also will only continue when you want to.
You can't make me do anything like prick!
Want to boost me up?
And the story stops until you decide to move on.
You ready?
Yes, ma'am. Choice. The problem is choice.
The way a game is told is a different way of experiencing a story, yet it's very unique and you get a similar feeling as you would watching a great film. Think of it as real life. There are no cuts or jumps like a movie. You're experiencing it like you would in real life. Every step, every voice you hear around you from other characters are like people you'd hear walking around a park or supermarket. You're with that character so long that he becomes more real and more of a friend in a way that when shit hits the fan and something happens, it feels like you've been playing as long as his journey he's been on. It provides a different kind of slow-paced form of story progression while also being paced well. That makes no sense, right?
Have you ever had a dream that you could do so?
Well, think of this. There are cutscenes in games and set pieces. That fuel and propel the main story and pace with gameplay story segments in between.
Show me where's...
Stop. I get it. But whatever it is you think you're going through right now is nothing to what I have been through.
The only difference is that movies only utilize scenes and plot
You
development.
could travel with him. No oath nor bond is laid.
The cutscenes and big moments would normally be how a story in a movie is told. But when you meticulously craft and plan things in places to keep you engaged throughout the game,
Oh shit.
you are still enjoying the storytelling in video games, but in a different way. You can talk to people and hear what they have to say, or you don't have to.
How you holding up?
Just a bit winded. Look this way. This will get us to the roof.
It enriches the experience, but the game has to be designed that regardless of that, it's enough to be enjoyable and understood. Call of Duty is an example of that. Its focus on fast-paced action with set pieces lacks the substance of world building, but is enough to be fun. But that choice of directing and narrative has to be done right where there's at least some substance. But without any substance, it adds no flavor and can essentially end up a bad result.
What's the worst that can happen?
Whether it's story changes or character development.
Avery's treasure was ours. It was always ours.
I left my life for you.
That balance of style and substance is determined by the writing and game design. It is extremely hard to write a game story because of this.
You gotta get a girdle from some Amazons.
Bill, what's the point?
Keep your toga on, pal.
You have to predict what the player would do in certain situations, based on what is presented to the player in the game.
Don't leave me to turn. Please.
What do you want to do?
And how it affects the future for the character or for the player. Which is why I now bring up the main thing that separates video games from movies. The emergent narrative is about writing a scenario that doesn't force a player to do something or hint something by using close-ups or tension. It is by predicting how a player would feel naturally without even knowing it.
And running, and I have a natural talent for that.
For example, near the ending of The Last of Us, you fight through a horde of enemies. In a movie, it might be a 5-minute scene with cuts between the action. But for a game, it's like an intense battle, but with obstacles placed in front of you. And you feel the struggle the character does as you play, as it replicates the emotions you get in the way the game is designed, with the story as a movie would. This next section might be a little long, to demonstrate how real time can emotionally affect you in a game. Remember, you've been fighting for about 10 minutes now. You've been told that Ellie is the cure to save humanity, and that she has to die for it to happen. And now you're rushing to save this girl that you've been with the whole game, before it's too late. Joel has endured so much as you witnessed throughout the game, and all that knowledge and experience you've gained throughout the game emotionally weighs you down, the same way a movie would, with a shorter time span. When you finally reach your goal, the player feels this intense exhaustion like the game provided them during this long vengeful shootout, and a feeling of revenge because of how the game was designed.
You fucking animal!
What's funny is you don't have to shoot the other doctors, but because of the way the game made you feel, you do.
I got you.
Or don't in this case. Everyone's affected differently. And that's emergent narrative. The response is based on the player's internal emotions. It was writing and designing gameplay as one to predict that a player would do something without being told and it just being a natural.
Like Sam? I can't get infected.
It's a very unique, fascinating way to evoke emotion as well as use its medium in an effective way to stand out on its own.
You're not my daughter. And I sure as hell ain't your dad.
But why care? Because they're just video game characters, right? Well, that's why my next thing I bring up is... in some films, CGI or graphics are incorporated in a real-looking world in certain instances to try to make the movie feel more alive. Some CGI can throw you out of the immersion. But if it doesn't, your mind can separate that look from what the feeling of the movie gives you, because of how the story is engaging and is presented well. you give it a pass, and it still gives you the experience you want out of it.
Move along. Move along.
Now, take that idea and apply it to video game characters.
I was afraid.
Afraid of what?
A game is basically all CGI because it isn't real people. But like a movie, game developers develop the game characters and add voices and animations, personalities to feel real enough that you separate the mindset that this is just a video game.
Ain't been out here in a while.
It's like we're on a date.
Well, I am the romantic type.
You got your ways.
Many of the greatest video games succeeds at
What
this.
could possibly go wrong?
What if we don't succeed?
We must succeed.
You can't die over and over in real life. So how can you consider this character a real person with real feelings and emotions? It is because of suspension of disbelief. In a video game, you can die over and over. Or fight a boss that has a health bar that makes it seem that the character is less than human. But when the following cutscene starts, and the character starts to die, you still feel that sense as if he's a real person, because that whole health bar escapes your mind. Every time the character dies, the player just ignores the fact that those deaths are part of the main story, and that the character hasn't died,
Everyone okay?
but as just losing.
Yes. Let's move.
You guys are pretty good at this stuff.
It's called luck. And it is gonna run out.
The game world is designed that when you actually pass a part, the thought of you dying over and over is like habitually overlooked, as if you're walking or driving a car in real life.
It's done, Minerva. The decision's made.
It's done without a second thought once you become accustomed to it.
I don't know. I'm making this up as I go.
In movies, a character will die once, but at the same time, if the game character dies in the actual story's purpose,
all of you, now, get as far away from here as you can.
Come with us. We'll find another way.
There isn't time.
Son.
You know it's true. It's already started. I need to do this now. So go. Go!
you feel the same way as if you died once like in a movie. Similar emotions with different types of deliveries with their own mediums.
Everything. And then you show up and somehow we find you just in time to save her.
Now, say my name. Heisenberg. You're goddamn right.
Joel and Ellie have a complicated relationship that is treading on thin ice.
You are treading on some mighty thin ice here.
Throughout the game, you're constantly chatting, learning each other's personalities, and if they're stuck together if they like it or not.
Yeah, everywhere you look, you just saw families torn apart. The whole damn world seemed to have turned upside down in a blink.
Is that after you lost Sarah?
Yes, it was.
I can't imagine losing someone you love like that. Losing everything that you know. I'm
This
sorry,
bond
Joel.
grows throughout the entire game, so imagine when Joel, the character you only have been controlling, seemingly dies and you're left in the role of Ellie.
Joel! Shit. Joel! Here. Oh, get up, get up, get up. You gotta tell me what to do.
You gotta get up! Joel!
The game tone and pace slows down to exemplify something has changed. The loss of Joel is made clear because of this.
This won't last very long.
Now, imagine a movie.
Give me your hand. Give me your other hand.
When someone dies or is out of a show, it continues on at the same pace.
Indiana. Let it go.
It can't replicate how a video game's real-life interactivity makes you feel. But you still feel that loss.
Elsa never really believed in the Grail. She thought she'd found the prize.
Except it's portrayed in two formats: video games and movies.
What did you find, Dad? Me. Illumination.
That's the power of using your medium to reach the same level as the other. These ways of storytelling, emergent narrative, suspension of disbelief, and switching character roles are what make video games stand out in their own unique way while providing the same response and emotion you'd feel as watching a movie. Okay, I know it's a lot to digest, but I ask you, watch a movie and play a game and think of everything I've just told you. It will give you a new perspective on storytelling that only a person who's played video games and watched a lot of films can understand. In my next video, I will tackle video game storytelling RPGs with an example provided by the game Mass Effect. Stay tuned.